When you think of Frank Sinatra and Justin Timberlake, they probably don't strike you as having much in common. One was the voice of the mid-20th century, the man who practically invented the idea of the modern pop star. The other came out of the late 90s boy band craze, wearing denim on red carpets and singing futuristic R&B-infused pop. Two totally different worlds, right? But here's the thing. Once I started digging, I realized their careers almost feel like reflections of each other. It's like Sinatra and Timberlake are brothers who just happened to be born decades apart. And honestly, I never thought I'd be saying that. Both had screaming fans in their teens, both transformed into serious solo stars, and both built legacies that stretched way past music. They dressed sharp, reinvented themselves when people counted them out, and even turned controversy into fuel. The parallels are uncanny, so uncanny that once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them. So, let's dive into these 12 striking similarities. And trust me, you'll come away with a whole new way of looking at Sinatra and Timberlake. If you rewind to the very start of Sinatra's career, he wasn't always the center of attention. He first joined a little group called the Hoboken Four, which had started as the Three Flashes. Sinatra was the young newcomer, and at first, he was just another guy singing backup. But it didn't take long for people to notice that his voice had something different, smoother, richer, more magnetic. And sure enough, Sinatra eventually struck out on his own, proving he didn't need a group to carry him. Now jump forward half a century, and you see Justin Timberlake playing out the same story. He started as one of the five faces of NSYNC, and even though the group was massively popular, you could already tell Timberlake had that something extra. His vocals stood out, his dance moves caught the spotlight, and by the early 2000s, he was ready to break free and go solo. Both Sinatra and Timberlake had to take that leap of faith, leaving the safety of a group to prove themselves as individuals. And both times, it worked. Sinatra became a household name in the 1940s, while Timberlake became one of the biggest solo stars of the 2000s. But as soon as they stepped into the spotlight alone, something even bigger happened. They became teen idols. Sinatra was one of America's very first teen idols. In the 1940s, teenage girls known as Bobby Soxers would crowd outside venues just for a glimpse of him. They fainted, screamed, cried, and treated him like a rock star long before rock and roll even existed. In fact, historians say Sinatra basically invented the idea of pop fandom as we know it today. And then, decades later, Justin Timberlake sparked the exact same hysteria. If you remember the NSYNC years, you remember the sheer chaos of fans. Timberlake posters covered bedroom walls, TRL countdowns were dominated by their music videos, and girls screamed themselves hoarse just to get tickets. He was the face of late 90s and early 2000s teen obsession. Both Sinatra and Timberlake show us something fascinating. Every generation has its heartthrob, and their faces become the symbols of youth culture. Sinatra had his Bobby Soxers. Timberlake had his MTV generation. Different decades, same phenomenon. And here's the thing, their influence wasn't just about their music or their voices. A big part of it was how they looked, dressed, and carried themselves. That's what we're diving into next, how both men became unexpected fashion icons. One thing I never realized until I started comparing them is how both Sinatra and Timberlake shaped men's fashion. Sinatra didn't just wear suits, he owned them. Slim-cut jackets, perfectly pressed trousers, the fedora tilted at just the right angle. He didn't follow trends, he set them. Men wanted to look like him, and women wanted to be around him. Fast forward to Timberlake, and you see a very similar story. Remember the early 2000s? The frosted tips, oversized jerseys, and denim-on-denim outfits were everywhere. But when Timberlake went solo, his style matured. Suddenly, it was slim suits, skinny ties, and perfectly tailored jackets. He even admitted Sinatra was an influence, saying Sinatra never had to try to be stylish, he just was. Both of them proved that image wasn't separate from music. It was part of the package. When you looked at Sinatra, you thought class. When you looked at Timberlake in his prime, you thought cool. Different decades, same magnetic influence. And their impact went even further than style. They both refused to be boxed in as just singers. They became all-around entertainers. Sinatra wasn't content with only recording music. He took Hollywood by storm. He won an Academy Award for From Here to Eternity, and starred in films like The Man with the Golden Arm and Ocean's 11. His career as an actor wasn't just a side project, it was another full chapter of his success. Justin Timberlake followed a very similar path. After conquering music, he stepped into acting with films like Alpha Dog, The Social Network, and Friends with Benefits. Critics were surprised by how natural he was on screen. He wasn't just dabbling, he was taking it seriously. This parallel shows something important. Both men wanted to be remembered as entertainers, not just singers, and their careers prove they had the talent to pull it off. Of course, it all worked because of their unforgettable voices that audiences couldn't get enough of. If there's one thing Sinatra was known for, it was that silky, effortless voice. He had a way of phrasing lyrics like he was having a personal conversation with you. No gimmicks, just pure control and charm. Timberlake's vocal style has a similar effect, though in a modern way. His falsetto became his signature, especially on tracks like Cry Me a River and Mirrors. He combined R&B smoothness with pop accessibility, making him appealing to almost everyone. Both voices weren't just technically strong, they were recognizable. You could hear a single note and know immediately who it was. That's rare, and that's why both men transcended being just singers. They became cultural figures. Sinatra didn't just influence music, he influenced an entire lifestyle. The Rat Pack, Las Vegas, the image of a martini glass in hand, Sinatra's persona helped define mid-20th century American culture. His influence was so deep that even people who weren't fans of his music knew his name. Now, look at Timberlake. Beyond music, he's a pop culture landmark. From his unforgettable Cry Me a River music video, which shaped 2000s breakup culture, to his hilarious Saturday Night Live sketches like Dick in a Box or History of Rap with Jimmy Fallon, Timberlake wasn't just a singer, he became part of the cultural conversation. Both Sinatra and Timberlake reached a level of fame where they stopped being just entertainers and became symbols of their time. But staying on top isn't easy. To survive, they had to reinvent themselves. In the early 50s, Sinatra's career actually stalled. He was dropped by his label, his voice started to fade, and critics thought he was done. But then, in 1953, he made one of the biggest comebacks in music history with From Here to Eternity and a fresh recording contract. His career was reborn, and he became even bigger than before. Timberlake faced a different but equally tricky challenge. When NSYNC split, people thought he'd fade away as just another boy band singer. But instead, he reinvented himself as a serious solo artist with his debut album, Justified. By the time Future Sex Love Sounds dropped in 2006, nobody questioned him anymore. He was a superstar. Both men showed that longevity in entertainment doesn't come from doing the same thing over and over. It comes from knowing when to evolve. And one of the reasons they pulled it off was their ability to light up a stage. Watching Sinatra live was like watching pure charisma in motion. He didn't need pyrotechnics or backup dancers. He just stood there, microphone in hand, and had the audience hanging on every word. He made a big room feel intimate. Timberlake, meanwhile, built his reputation on high-energy performances, slick choreography, perfect timing, and a charm that radiated even in stadiums. He knew how to balance the spectacle with personality. Both men weren't just performers, they were magnetic forces on stage, and that stage presence helped them appeal to audiences far outside their core fan bases. Sinatra's fan base wasn't just teenage girls, though the Bobby Soxers were loyal. Adults loved him too. He appealed to blue-collar workers, middle-class families, and even high society. He was one of the rare artists who could unite different demographics. Timberlake managed the same trick. He was beloved by teenage fans, respected by R&B and hip-hop artists, and embraced by mainstream pop listeners. His collaborations with artists like Timbaland and Jay-Z gave him credibility beyond the pop world, while still keeping him on Top 40 radio. This crossover appeal is one of the clearest reasons why both Sinatra and Timberlake lasted so long in the spotlight. They weren't locked into one audience. And behind the scenes, both were also sharp businessmen. Frank Sinatra wasn't just an artist, he was an entrepreneur. He founded Reprise Records in 1960, giving him creative control and ownership at a time when most artists had none. That move changed the way artists thought about their business. Timberlake also showed sharp instincts. He invested in tech ventures like MySpace, though that one didn't age well, got into the restaurant business, and even launched his own tequila brand. He built income streams beyond music, ensuring his influence wasn't tied to chart performance alone. Both men proved that behind the charm and talent, there was also a keen sense of strategy, but even the sharpest business minds can't escape controversy. Sinatra's career was often surrounded by whispers, alleged mob connections, clashes with the press, and personal scandals. At times, these controversies threatened to overshadow his music. Yet, every time, he bounced back, sometimes bigger than before. Timberlake's most infamous controversy was the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show with Janet Jackson. The fallout was massive, and for years, critics debated his role in the scandal. He's also faced backlash for moments where fans thought he crossed the line or played it too safe. But just like Sinatra, Timberlake managed to weather the storm and continue thriving. What's striking is how both men turned controversy into resilience. Instead of being defined by their scandals, they used them as chapters in much larger stories. And through it all, they kept pushing their music forward, always updating traditional sounds for new generations. Sinatra didn't invent swing or jazz, but he redefined them. His phrasing, his orchestral arrangements, and his ability to blend popular styles made his music timeless. He wasn't afraid to modernize traditional sounds. Timberlake did the same in his era. He mixed classic soul, funk, and R&B with cutting-edge pop production. Songs like Suit and Tie with Jay-Z were direct nods to Sinatra's influence, blending old-school elegance with modern beats. Both artists understood that innovation doesn't mean abandoning tradition. It means reshaping it for your time. Which brings us to the bigger picture. When you put all of these parallels together, the resemblance is almost eerie. Looking at Sinatra and Timberlake side by side, the similarities are undeniable. Both started in groups before breaking free as solo stars. Both became teen idols, style icons, and all-around entertainers. They reinvented themselves, commanded the stage, navigated controversies, and left cultural footprints bigger than music. It almost feels like Timberlake picked up a playbook Sinatra wrote decades earlier and then updated it for the modern age. And what I really didn't expect, when I first started comparing them, was just how many times their stories lined up. It's uncanny. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If Sinatra and Timberlake are brothers across time, who's going to be their successor for the next generation? Who's the artist we'll be comparing to Timberlake in 50 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear who you think could be the Sinatra or Timberlake of tomorrow.